Hello, and welcome to episode 198 of Prose. This week, meet a desperate man, one of many visitors of the infamous Grafting Street. Please consider heading to prosepodcasts.com, our one-stop shop for all things prose. There you can find links to social media, the episodes, a shop for swag, the show's Patreon, and more. On social media, like and share away. Most importantly, please do consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing wherever you grab your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tales, shall we? This week we have Grafting Street, Parts 1 and 2. Enjoy.
Grafting Street, Part 1. An original short story by Jared I. McGee. I've always been a bit of a spendthrift. Ebenezer Scrooge, in that ancient children's story, elicits more pity from me before he gets spoiled out of who he really is by all those bloody ghosts. It's a sad tale, that one, really. But even though I am particular about what I will spend my hard-earned money on, you'd think I'd have made an exception just this once. I mean, legal fees and doctors. That's what you're not supposed to skimp on, right? I should have known that the thaumaturgist I'd chosen might be less than reputable just from the chock-a-block look of his ramshackle office building, in which he was the only tenant, in which there were no windows, from which oily, acrid steam rose day and night. But of course, I just had to save a central or three. You have to understand, see? I love to swim. Always have. Ever since I was a wee little lad. My mum used to call me Tadpole on account of my being nigh impossible to get out of the water. She'd take me up north to the ponds and streams and lochs to play in the unspoiled waters. Waters that wouldn't burn. We'd fish sometimes too, when Da and Jystrom could come with us, but I never cared much for that. Seeing the fish writhe and gasp for air as they began their slow, suffocating deaths made me sad. Saw myself as their cousin, if you will. When I could, I'd toss some back, even though I knew Da would catch more and Jystrom would knock me on the arm for my heroic deed. Once I hit 10 spans though, it was off to the shine factories, just like every other child in Biter's Bend. The swimming trips stopped. The fun stopped. Luckily, I was good at my job. Unluckily, that meant I'd spend more time even closer to the shine. What most citizens don't know is that shine will rot you if you get too close to too much of it too often. In my case, I all but waded through the shit day in and day out for a decade. By the time I reached my majority 11 spans down the line, my legs were withered and ruined. I walked with a shuffle and a limp, relying on a cane more than any young man should, even one that deals in shine. Once a span, Ma and I head up country, like the old days. Supposedly, the fresh air will help reverse some of the damage, but that sounds like optimistic propaganda from the hill to me. Still, we go. Da and Jystrom both died several spans back now. Da from a heart attack and Jystrom from a fight over some food at market. So I just can't let Ma down. I have to keep trying to keep a shiny approach to life. For her. While on one of these trips, I saw a young woman about my age, splashing and playing in the water. Her skin was the colour of the expensive wood bookshelves in the Pinnacle Library, a deep, rich brown. She was barely covered, a tattered light blue, mostly transparent frock clinging to her wet body. I couldn't help but stare. To my surprise, she approached me. And when she did, I couldn't help but notice the chunky off-white splotches modeling her legs and lower back. I was embarrassed and looked away. As it turned out, Anayansa had a great sense of humor and put me at ease, which is funny to say since I was the fully clothed one gaping at her. We chatted about all sorts of humdrum whippoorwill, but the standout from our conversation was her grafts. Like me, Anayansa had done well in the factories, and like me, she'd ruined her body. Convinced that she could still live a better life, she set out to get a thaumaturgist appointment to enhance her failing body. Through some saving of her factory wages and a little time on her back for all kinds of centrals, she was able to get her grafts. She had 4 cetacean patches woven into her. Delphinidians, to be precise. Now, not only was she not hobbled, she was graceful and strong on the land and in the water. Seeing this second chance at life made me realize that I had to do the same. Ma needs me. So, I resolved myself to find someone to graft me. More hours at the factory. Selling contraband after hours. Smuggling bottles of unprocessed shine out for sale on the black market. A tryst or two fucking rich old ladies, thinking they'll feel more alive taking cocks from rough hoods like me. Feel more real if they peddle their pussies around biters, and cornfile, and coal hill, and cotton farthing. Point is, I got the money. Then, like the fool I so often am, I made the mistake of going to a discount thaumaturgy joint. If you've never been poor, you just can't understand trying to pinch centrals the way we paupers down Cheapside do. I saved plenty of money to hire at least a middling grafter, but thoughts of what the extra could do for Mum, it was just too much for me to spend it all on myself. Since Da and Jystrom was indentured, which came long before their deaths, I'm all she has, and my paltry wage couldn't keep us in food, or heat, or much of anything. We subsisted on the small, fuzzy gausses that scoured our dilapidated building for wayward crumbs from the meager meals being served up within. The poor beasties we ate were the fortunate ones then. They did not starve to death. So, grafting on the cheap it was. Anayansa had spoken of any number of amazing creatures. Flying, walking, swinging, climbing, swimming. I could have had my choice of almost any of them, had I but spent all my hard-earned centis. Instead, I put most of them in the old cinder jar Mum kept any earnings that her 3 boys brought home for the family. That cinder jar. Ha! It brings back memories. I heard Mom and Da talking about her working only once, and in hushed, angry whispers. Even as a whelp, I knew Ma was thinking of selling herself to some of the rich for some carnal pleasure, or some of her spare parts, or even worse, piece of her essence. That's the only time I ever heard Da raise his voice at her. Never again did the subject matter come up. With most of my centrals now in the jar, I banished thoughts of Thaumaturgy Boulevard, and I made my way down to Grafting Street. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Grafting Street, a short story by me, Jared I. McGee. The first backing track from this piece is Not the Streets You Used to Walk Along, from Philip Weigel. It comes from his album Soundtracks and was taken from the Free Music Archive. It is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. The second track is The Talons of Adventure, The Antlers of Romance by Dr. Turtle. It was also taken from the Free Music Archive, and it is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License.
Grafting Street Part 2 is coming up right now. Stick around.
Grafting Street, Part 2 of a short story by Jared I. McGee. The walk to Grafting Street is rather bleak, but then again, anything down in the lower 16R. 16 districts, that is, though district is a kind term for what, precisely, we've got going on down this way. Go down that way as the sun is going low behind the hill, and I submit that no matter how brave a man or woman or, well, whatever you are, you'll get a bit of a fearful air about you. As I made my way down the narrow streets, I went through the districts, all of them, in the sing-songy way the back-end younglings do to remember all those forgotten spaces and peoples. In Biter's Bend, you'll make no friends. In Cornfile, they'll catch the little ones and make 'em stay a while. In Coal Hill, the black rocks and black lungs head to the mill. In Fishwan Way, fishmongers' catches make Hall's day. To Shine Row, mothers' babies go to work and die and earn their dough. In Cotton Farthing, thread from plant and blood is their darling. In Thaumaturgy Boulevard, they bargain hard, but can remake you as if you were a godling. In Foothill, they think they're rich ones still. In Creation Stowe, the girls are quite friendly, their prices low. In Brown Leaf, deadly smokes to be had rather cheap. In Trivigante Crescent, heaven, earth, and hell come together quite unpleasant. In Otland, gouse meat passes as venison to all the 16's band. In Powder Corner, they make fire and love young firm men more the latter than the former. At least that's the way it's usually planned. In Needle's Point is a place where a gent can dole life's pain for some coin. In Tribesh Tuff, the girls are abundant, but want no man's stuff. In Flagrante on Mushi, fires of all sorts burn aplenty. In Grafting Street, you get new feet, but beware they don't take your liver. So those, my children, are all the 16. If you ever find yourself there, pray to your gods and move your feet, so you don't wind up a corpse in the river. I didn't just repeat the litany once. I made it through the rhyming teaching tour at least 3 times before I saw the intersection of Swinesong Avenue, a small subsidiary of Creation Stowe, and Grafting Street. Chalk it up to the nerves, you might. Goddess knows I was getting more and more antsy as I made my way ever closer to the den of cheap-rate thaumaturgy that was my final stop of the evening. As I revisited my happier childhood by way of the rather pessimistic rhyme, I thought of Mum at home, so very scared for me to be trying to take on this new endeavour all alone. She'd wanted to come down with me, but walking the streets past sundown is not smart for anyone, much less an aging woman with too much trust in her heart and naivete in her eyes. That's okay. She'll be fussing about so much in our little oval that she'll undoubtedly go to the old cinder jar and find all that money I'd left behind for us to better our lives with post-procedure. God, I began to realize just how uneven and unkempt these old decaying streets were. The cobblestone that had gone up top of what used to be more familiar, far smoother grey stone was uneven and choppy. Dips, holes. For a hobbled shine boy like me, it was hard going. Grafter Street, in particular, was quite the challenge. Even the men sent down from the hill and other places don't like going down there. So the streets suffer. And naturally, what few brave residents remain in the district along with the chock-a-block practitioners suffer. Maybe even worse than those terrible roads. I was in luck though. My man's sign was distinct, and that distinct sign stared at me from on high after only a couple 100 yards into the quarter. It was an odd affair. A massive refusing eye with a sizable roseate pupil. Within the imposing pupil, a buxom woman cut from what seemed to be brownish marble, sat cross-legged and bare-chested. Sumptuous breasts juxtaposed by a horned goat's head on her neck and large eagle's wings on her back. She looked to be waving hello at passers-by, but that could easily be a darker hand of farewell as people searching for a better life enter into their doom. You know, I hate to admit it, but I took an extra minute or two just to look at the crazy beast's womanly features. I normally try to stay away from all that pay-for-play mess down in the districts, and my oh my, was there ever a lot to be had, but right about now I was regretting my decision not to make a quick pit stop off by Crescent, or Trivigante, or Tribus, or even Old Mushy. Could have been my last opportunity to indulge in the more powerful sex, as I call them. Those thoughts and the deep mahogany of the beast woman's breasts sent my mind back off to the countryside, and the pond and Anayanza. Her impossibly toned and perfect, though mottled body coming out of the water. Her browner than I'd ever seen in my sexual adventures nipples showing rather prominently through her besoaked shirt. Her Delphinidion's grafts patchworked in with her skin, slightly lighter, kind of grey, but no less beautiful and providing her with a strength and vitality most could only ever dream of down this side. My thoughts continued to wander down from those wonderful breasts, thinking of what we two might be able to accomplish together, stripped down with all this but superhuman advancement sewn into our bodies. I began to recall more than just her nipples, trying to will back the precise body I'd seen through that translucent fabric. About that time, I heard a noise. You know, you can, may, and should enter into Ymir Zuto's haven before the sun sets. That is, if you already have an appointment you plan on making, before his doors are barred to riffraff and refuse of the streets. I realized my eyes had been closed, admonished myself for being caught so off guard, so close to sunset. That's a damn good way of getting killed after all. Willed Anayanza's sculpted form from my mind, and I opened my eyes again. There, before the russet and umber so similar to the girl I want to fuck, and licking flames of the L that grafted abominations are said to endure in eternity, and pink sunsets of days I hope to spend in great health. Below that imposing sign was a man in deep green robes. So deep and so dark were those greens, they were far blacker than true green, Stygian even. His tall hat cast shadows over his eyes and his visage, but somehow I knew he was smiling down at me. Well, boy? Yes, sir. I'm coming in now, I stammered. Wonderful. No good comes after the rays of the setting sun. Cease to kiss Grafting Street. And with that, he stepped into the door, gesturing me in. I entered slowly, noting that the last rays of that peacekeeper we call the sun were, in fact, all gone now. I whispered to myself, no good comes after they're gone, eh? Well, I sure hope that's just some canned saying they say to tourists. I stepped into darkness and cold, and the door creaked shut behind me. Thank you for listening to Part 2 of Grafting Street, a short story by me, Jared I. McGee. I am honored to have used a great many artists' sounds and backing tracks to add to this story. Most of the sounds were taken from freesound.org and its users. The intro piano is by Porphyr, the footsteps are by Sabatyphonoi, the ominous bass by ERH, the horror track sounds by Zanko123, and the hellish bells by Marty Sonic. Sabatyphonoi's track is being used under a Creative Commons CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication license. Porphyr and ERH's tracks are being used under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 unported licenses. Zanko123 and Marty Sonic's tracks are being used under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 3.0 unported licenses. The larger ambient soundtrack piece was taken from the Free Music Archive and is titled It Feels Good to Feel Good Again, an original piece off the album Ad Astra Volume 2 by PC3. It is being used under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Thank you to PC3 and all of these amazing artists for giving the world such unfettered access to their creations. As this was a lot of soundtrack information, I encourage everyone to check the links out on the podcast's webpage at prospodcast.com to get even more information on all these wonderful creators. Additionally, if you enjoy these stories and the sounds behind them, consider giving to freesound.org or to the Free Music Archive and making a contribution. Moreover, go check out all these artists' pages on those web pages. These websites and these artists drive a great many creative projects.
That does it this week for Prose. As you continue about your day, I do hope that you'll love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is always stranger than fiction. Thank you so much for listening.